Hello and welcome to a Friday, live right here on the early line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination and consume everything all across the grid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. And this Friday on the early line begins with a question for my co-host. Donnie, is it still a football Friday here on the early line?
I guess you can say it's always a football Friday, 365 days a year. So forget about Friday, make it every single day. But maybe today would be one of those days where it's like, okay, we could still keep the football Friday around. Why? Because there's still football left to be played this season.
There is still one final football game in 2023, and that Super Bowl LVIII countdown has now officially reached single digits. We are 9 days away from Super Bowl Sunday in Viva Las Vegas between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. We will continue to break down every angle of the big game. And the next time after this show, we go up till 11 a.m. Eastern, that you see both DRS and myself. We will be live from Radio Row inside the Convention Center in Mandalay Bay on the Strip in Las Vegas. SportsGrid heads out to the desert. DRS, you excited?
I'm excited. I am ready to put in that work and bring the people the knowledge they're going to need to get them ready for Super Bowl LVIII. We ready.
And yeah, we are ready. Ooh, I would love a DRS hype clip. We ready. That would be. Now,
Wag surf
now
right
you're
in there.
talking.
Yeah.
Now you're talking. The vibes are high on a Friday, a football Friday officially, live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. Let's bring in that radio audience. Sirius XM Channel 159, all of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the fold as well. He is Donnie, I am Ben. One final football game in 2023. Super Bowl LVIII is now just 9 days away. But for the 30 other NFL organizations, the focus on the offseason. 8 head coaching vacancies at the end of the 2023 NFL regular season, and now all 8 have officially been filled. The last one up, the Washington Commanders. They have named their new head coach, Dan Quinn, who spent 6 years as the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, will lead this Washington football organization into a new era outside the nation's capital.
I'm not going to say I love this hire because I don't. I always think the future of the NFL and for the health of your franchise, make sure you get the best young offensive coordinator that you can get, because if he's really good, he stays with you because you're the head coach and not an offensive coordinator where he would leave town. Look, Dan Quinn went to Atlanta, drawed them to a Super Bowl, had one of the biggest collapses we've ever seen. All right, and was a very good defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. But when we're looking in the new generation of NFL, it must start with offense, not defense here. He might be able to stabilize the franchise from just being a flat-out embarrassment, but taking them to the next level, I don't think he's going to do that here. So for myself, I give it a C grade with an upside of, they might be a competitive team, but Dan Quinn's not winning a Super Bowl in Washington.
Not a splashy hire, and you expected the Commanders to make a splash with this new ownership group into a new era for this Commanders franchise. Plenty more reaction to Dan Quinn being hired in Washington, what it means for the coaching carousel that at this point, at least for the head coaching positions around the NFL, has ceased to spin. Now we go around the association. Of course, big news this week in the NBA MVP race and for the future in Philadelphia. Joel Embiid and his knee injury. Diagnosed with a meniscus injury, but the timetable not exactly certain, DRS, by any estimation. He will be evaluated following this weekend for what that timetable looks like for the 76ers.
Yeah, it looks like, going around the block here and doing some research on this. If it's not so bad where they can just have a repair, it would be like 4 to 6 weeks. But if it's a full reconstruction, looks like that could be 4 to 6 months. Whether or not he is healthy enough to play in the playoffs, that's to be determined. But the one thing we know about the Philadelphia 76ers, they needed a 100% Joel Embiid healthy for the playoffs. Yeah. It looks like either way at this point, that's probably not going to be the case. But then again, every season you open up, just like the Clippers we talk about, Ben. They're never healthy there. Joel Embiid is never healthy for a playoff run, so it's not so surprising as a Sixers fan.
Did not matter last night. Tyrese Maxey returns for Philadelphia and drops 51 on the road in Salt Lake. The Sixers win outright as a 5.5-point road underdog, 127-124 against the Utah Jazz. Just a 4-game slate in the association last night, but a historic rivalry that lacked a little bit of luster, at least we thought, entering the game last night inside TD Garden in Boston between the Lakers and the Celtics. No Anthony Davis. No LeBron James for Los Angeles. No problem. Austin Reeves goes off for 32 points, hits 7 triples in the Lakers as a 15-point underdog, and the Celtics own their 3rd loss outright this season at home, 114-105 last night in Beantown.
I wonder if this could propel the Lakers, and I'm not even being facetious at this point right now. We're trying to say like, I'm just going to, have fun with the Lakers. This was one of those strategic games that the Lakers looked at and said, we're not even on a back-to-back. We don't think we have any shot to win this basketball game with our superstars, so why waste them for 35 minutes in a loss here in Boston? They actually benched their 2 best players and went out and won this basketball game. So you didn't expend any energy and extra rest time for AD and LeBron. I love what I saw last night out of the Lakers. I just couldn't believe it. I was stunned.
The hottest team in the association, the New York Knicks, add to their win streak, make that 9 straight games. And after being an all-star snub a season ago, Jalen Brunson being named an all-star reserve yesterday paid off that honor. A 40-point performance inside Madison Square Garden. The Knicks come back to knock off the Indiana Pacers 109-105. They cover as a 3-point home favorite, and a total of 236 stays under.
And the OG we thought might be possibly playing in this basketball game did not play, and the Knicks still won at this point here. And again, shout out Dante DiVincenzo for once again playing close to 40 minutes in the starting lineup. The Knicks are on a roll, and they're using guys that we didn't expect them to be on a roll with, Ben.
They have won 15 of their last 17. 15 of the last 17 for New York have also stayed under that pregame total. College basketball, the magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues. The Cornhuskers down by 19 points early in the opening half, 16 at the break against 6th-ranked Wisconsin, come all the way back to force overtime, and Nebraska rallies in OT, 80-72. The Huskers close as a slight home favorite, and they pick up their 2nd victory against a top 10 opponent this season, knocking off Wisconsin 80-72 in overtime.
And you usually expect maybe get a big comeback against a team that's real sloppy, typically with the basketball, high tempo to allow you to get back into the game. If you're down that many points against Wisconsin, they're usually going to take a knee here and run that clock out on you. That's a great win for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And also, storm in the court out there in Huskerville.
Gotta do it inside Pinnacle Bank Arena. The Baltimore Orioles won a week. It's been new ownership, private equity, and a 3-time All-Star Corbin Burns, the new ace for the O's. Oh, and the coaching carousel at the head coaching spot might stop spinning. Not for the coordinators. Raiders expected to hire Cliff Kingsbury as their new OC. More in the NFL next.
Super Bowl is set in Vegas. We get a rematch from just a few years ago.
The only consistency in the playoffs has been Travis Kelce.
Brock Purdy, back-to-back weeks throwing 1 touchdown pass, right? You can't win MVP with 1 touchdown pass.
Hey, I hate the Chiefs, but I bet on them.
This is going to be a game that is played inside a field goal now from a spread perspective.
All that matters is there's 1 game left, the big game.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games.
but he's the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the rack. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit, going like, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Eight head coaching vacancies at the end of the 2023 National Football League regular season. And as of this moment, all 8 vacancies have been filled. The last to do it, the Washington Commanders, who name a new head coach for a new era for this Commanders organization. Dan Snyder is out. New ownership group outside the nation's capital, and now a new head coach. Dan Quinn, the new head coach of the Washington Commanders. Donnie, you gave it a C in terms of the grade for the hire when we opened up the show with this news about 10 minutes ago. Why is it just an average grade for you?
Well, also, here's how we can break it down, too, because if you just go based on last year, right, D'Amico Ryans gets the job at the Houston Texans, high draft pick, get a quarterback. It worked out really well for them. It did. That's the exception to the rule. Most franchises and foundations are built upon this. We have a high draft pick. We're going to pick a quarterback. Let's get the best offensive coordinator we can to get this kid started in the right direction. Bobby Sloak was really good for the Houston Texans, but also you take a look for the Carolina Panthers. Their number one pick didn't work out so well, and that was actually with an offensive coordinator / head coach in Frank Reich. So we're not saying that this is a terrible move, but for me, future of the NFL is getting the offensive guy and getting him to stick around here. But also, let's take a look at what went into this for the Commanders and how they wound up with Dan Quinn as their head coach. And also, this is a franchise in a little bit of turmoil, moving out of the clouds of, Dan Snyder's, the ownership group, and all the nonsense that they had to deal with for the past 25 years. I like the hirings there in the front office, and I think they did it the right way. You know what? New ownership group. Let's get new management in. Then we're going to find our general manager. Then we're going to find our head coach. I think that's a very healthy way to basically start a franchise. But here's the problem I have. You can't tell me right now that they back-channeled for weeks upon end on Ben Johnson. We heard from multiple guests here, and it just looked like it lined up that Ben Johnson was going to be your offensive coordinator. Now, the question with this is you never would have thought that when they were looking for a coach, they would have wound up with a defensive coordinator. Because, like, hey, look, new ownership group, innovative, quarterbacks coming to town. Let's get the best offensive guy we can get, which really makes it interesting where the backup plan basically was a scramble to say, now we just got to get a competent coach who's been a head coach before that's going to rally the troops and we won't embarrass ourselves. That's a tough swing and miss here for the Washington Commanders. I don't care how they paint the picture, because if you remember, Ben, they got on that plane with their ownership group and front office to go meet with Ben Johnson, basically to say, you know what? Here's what we're going to pay you. Why don't you sign this and come back on the plane? We'll introduce you in a press conference the next day. They get up in the air. He says no. And they're basically like, oh, my goodness. Now we're in full scramble mode, and made sure they put out all that good PR by going like, look, We were going out there for an interview. There was no sure thing we're even going to give Ben Johnson the job. No shot, because they would have already moved. This wasn't a franchise that's like, hey, you know what? We just got knocked out of the playoffs. Now we're in a real tizzy, and we're trying to fight to see what the next head coach is going to be because it didn't work out. This was an organization that basically went through the last entire season. Once you had that once you had that ownership change, that knew they were looking for a new coach, and Ben Johnson was going to be it, and he left them at the altar. They scrambled and just had to get somebody at this point, Ben.
So we'll focus on Dan Quinn in just a moment, but that's my overall assessment and takeaway of this hire for the Commanders as well. Ben Johnson was the hottest commodity in this NFL coaching carousel. You can tell me otherwise, and you are wrong. Ben Johnson was the guy. Ben Johnson was the promising young star. Ben Johnson was that young, innovative, and creative head coach that could doctor in a new era of whatever football franchise he became the head coach of. Was it going to be a proven certainty that he was going to have success without any head coaching experience? Of course not, but he would have been the name that I think 95% of whatever fan base he went to for whatever franchise would have been like, yes, yes, yes. We are optimistic once again about the future of my favorite football team. Dan Quinn is not that. And specifically for Washington, Donnie, it was clear the Commanders were trying to bring in this new era of an organization, trying to get out the sour taste that Dan Snyder left in Landover. It used to be a proud franchise. It used to be a proud fan base. It used to be a successful and winning franchise. They have not been that. There might be Commanders fans out there who are 20, 25, 30 years old that haven't seen success because Dan Snyder became the owner in May of 1999. In that span, up until this past season or through this season of 2023, they have never reached an NFC title game. They have hardly ever done anything in the postseason. But Donnie, in the 17 years before Dan Snyder became the head coach, the Washington football organization won multiple Super Bowls, played in 5 NFC championship games. They won 3 Lombardi trophies. They played in another. This was one of the most successful organizations in all of the National Football League. And I think they were trying to inspire that confidence and hope once again with a big name hire like Ben Johnson. They swung and missed on that. It falls to Dan Quinn. Again, he has had success as a head coach in the National Football League. He has that pedigree in terms of what his career has looked like. Highly regarded, and rightfully so, as one of the best defensive minds in all of the sport. We saw that these past 3 years for Dallas. We saw that before he became the head coach of the Falcons in Seattle. Legion of Boom. The Seahawks were the best scoring defense in both of his years as the DC. And he had success in Atlanta. He's just going to be remembered, as everybody is, on that 2016 Falcons team for the collapse in Super Bowl 51 against the New England Patriots and Tom Brady. It's not a knock against Dan Quinn, the person or the coach. I think it just says what the hopes were for this big first hire for the new ownership group of the Commanders, which they ultimately fell into Dan Quinn's lap.
Yes, and also, if you remember, when we're taking a look at that Atlanta regime, Dan Quinn was a very good head coach, but you know what the catalyst for that regime was? It was Matt Ryan at quarterback and also Julio Jones at wide receiver, but who was calling those plays? It was Kyle Shanahan of the San Francisco 49ers now. So if you can catch lightning in a bottle and find a guy like that, which again, let's go back in time here and say to ourselves, all right, what would have been the better coaching move? Just making Kyle Shanahan head coach in Atlanta, and you would have your dynamic play caller for the next 15, 20, 30 years if he wants to stick around and have that job. That's why it makes it so interesting, because even if we do get a scenario like we see in Detroit, like we see in Houston now, those guys are eventually moving on. If you're the head coach, you're going to stay because you're not going to get a better head coaching job in the middle of a contract. You are the head coach of that franchise in that city. That's what's questionable. But also, we do have to take that into account. I do believe the back channels were working where Ben Johnson was lined up and maybe they're just trying to, secure a couple final details. And Ben Johnson just got really cold feet and goes, you know what? I got a really good thing in Detroit here. And next year I might be able to get the Buffalo Bills job. If that doesn't work out, I'll stick around for one more season, because there's no way. And maybe they'll try to paint this picture going, you know what? Dan Quinn was our guy all along, which they always say that. Same thing on like draft night. We couldn't believe that this player fell to us. No, you were supposed to get X player at 8.
Yeah.
You waited till 10. You got burned. You just want to cover this up and said you got the guy you wanted to. Dan Quinn is going to be a fine coach in Washington, but it doesn't move the needle. It shouldn't excite the fan base. And I know that front office and ownership group was hoping for different here and didn't get it. Now they just have to bide their time and hope it works out.
6 seasons in Atlanta. Dan Quinn's overall head coaching record 43-42, 2 playoff victories as well in that span. He had 3 seasons to start where he did not have a losing record, and in 2016 and 17 double-digit wins. Then 3 straight losing seasons. He was fired following week number 5 during his final year in Atlanta, the 2020 NFL campaign. So here is the coaching carousel in the 2024 NFL season. And one thing that stands out, Donnie, the names not listed in these 8 new head coaching jobs: Bill Belichick and Mike Vrabel.
By the way, you take out Jim Harbaugh on that graphic for the Chargers. This was a horrendous hiring cycle. How about that? And again, not to say it can't work out, but we had rock stars available that we thought would be franchise-changing guys, and we got a lot of, that guy's the head coach? He took the job there? Who is that guy? Yeah, that usually doesn't work out all that well.
Listen, I think there are some really good hires. I love Mike McDonald in Seattle, but to Donnie's point, when Mike Vrabel was on the market and Bill Belichick was on the market, we were like, oh my God, what a time to let go of your head coach. It didn't really pan out that way. Around the association, up next.
Super Bowl is set in Vegas. We get a rematch from just a few years ago.
The only consistency in the playoffs has been Travis Kelce.
Brock Purdy, back-to-back weeks throwing 1 touchdown pass, right? He can't win MVP with 1 touchdown pass.
I hate the Chiefs, but I bet on them.
This is going to be a game that is played inside a field goal now from a spread perspective.
All that matters is there's 1 game left, the big game.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect 6th man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the rack. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like, OKC just rolling into Detroit, going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
A quadruple header last night on a Thursday night slate around the association, but we start with some big NBA news. Injury concern for the reigning NBA MVP, Joel Embiid, who earlier this week in Golden State against the Warriors went down with a left knee injury. The Sixers are calling it an injured lateral meniscus in his left knee, and he will be out at least through this weekend while a treatment plan is finalized. Virtually, Donnie, as you read between the tea leaves there, they're not entirely sure what the timetable looks like at this moment for Embiid's return to the floor. They will finalize that course, how long he will be out, knowing the All-Star break is only about 3.5 weeks away as well.
And also trying to read into between what the Sixers are saying and what that timeline is going to be. If I had to guess right now, Joel Embiid is going to be back this season and be ready for the playoffs. But that doesn't mean you're getting MVP fully healthy. I'm going to dominate out here, Joel Embiid. He just might be out there and saying, all right, I'll give you what I can and I'll lumber up and down the floor. Because the one thing we do know about Joel Embiid, which again is a lot of larger athletes, we're not talking about a 6'3" guard, okay, let me bounce back from this injury. The reason why big men don't usually last as long as guards is because that body takes a beating just running up and down the court and the physical pounding you take typically in the low post. So if I'm going to get Joel Embiid back, is it with a big bulky knee brace and he'll give you what he can? And is that what the Sixers want? Because it's not as if it's now or never for the Sixers where anything we get out of Embiid will help us because we already have the best team in the NBA. No, your run to success, Ben, in the playoffs is going to be how good Joel Embiid can actually be, dropping 35 and 13 every single night to give you a chance. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that, but I actually would be surprised. And again, not being a doctor, if this was in 2 days we hear Joel Embiid shut down for the season, see you again next year. I think they're going to do the most they can with the rehab and maybe do a little bit of tinkering in there with the knee as opposed to a complete rehab of that knee, and he'll be back. Well, again, as a Sixers fan, I know how this ends. They'll win their first round. They'll be out in the second round. We'll worry about the next season. Can Joel Embiid stay injury-free, which he never does.
Yeah, and listen, that's been a story for Joel Embiid. You look back on the playoff run a season ago, hand injuries that led to discomfort that really hindered the postseason appearance for Philadelphia. This, a left knee injury. We will see how significant, how serious it is, and what the timeline looks like for Embiid's return to the floor. Of course, Joel Embiid's NBA career has been maligned by injuries. It got off to a very rocky start as he had foot surgery before he even entered the NBA, missing the first 2 seasons of his NBA career. Of course, we hope Joel Embiid is back, but Donnie, the reason he's not listed on the MVP odds any longer is because he is more than likely going to miss at least 5 more games, which would put him outside of the 65-game minimum for award consideration in the association this year. Nikola Jokic remains the odds-on favorite at -140 to win the NBA MVP. Just 4 games last night in the NBA, but one was a historic rivalry that we thought entering in Boston would be great, and LeBron James against Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and the crew in Boston. Nope. No AD, no LeBron. Balloons to a 15-point spread in favor of the Celtics, but you would believe that LeBron went off for 50 and AD put in 30 and 15 when you look at the final score. The Lakers hand Boston just their 3rd home defeat of this season. They are now 22-3 inside TD Garden as the Lakers, led by Austin Reeves, win outright as a 15-point road underdog in Beantown, 114-105.
Yeah, we handicapped this game yesterday, and I like the Lakers getting the 11.5 under the guys that LeBron James and Anthony Davis would be out there, and you're going to be able to party, and you're going to say, you know what, I'll keep it close, but we won't win this basketball game. But also, part of the handicap came in where I know how good the Boston Celtics are. I know how good the Boston Celtics are at home, but something is a little bit amiss there in the past couple weeks for the Celtics at home, taking a couple losses, which they didn't have any coming up to that certain point, and getting into some close games. And I figured, look, the Lakers are going to give it their best effort here. Why? Because they have to. They're going to be a team here that's looking at being under 500 roughly heading into the All-Star break. That's not going to be good enough. So you rested a couple guys, you got them ready for this game, and LeBron and AD would be ready to go. And then you see, like, you know what? Neither one of these guys are going to play. And I said to myself, you know what? That's actually the sign of a smart thinking basketball team that goes, why am I going to play LeBron 38 minutes, Anthony Davis 41 minutes in this game, and still lose here? Why don't we just take this night off, keep the guys rested, we'll take the loss that is going to be automatic anyway, and we'll be better for it before the All-Star break and get some guys some extra rest here and maybe pick up a victory that we know we can get down the line. The fact that they went out in that basketball game and beat the Celtics on their home court without AD and without having LeBron James, that's amazing. It only goes to show you where the human mentality of, hold on, AD's not playing, LeBron's not playing. Roll that basketball out here. Let's just take the Lakers for granted and knock them around. And it didn't happen.
That had to have been the mentality for Joe Mazzulla's Boston team. All right, no AD, no LeBron. Let's get a 15-point win. Let's get out of here. Make this pretty quick and easy. We'll improve to 23-2 inside our own home arena this year. That did not happen. In fact, 2 of those 3 home losses in Beantown for the C's have happened in the last 5 days and against 2 LA teams. Saturday night against the Clippers. Last night, of course, against the shorthanded Lakers led by Austin Reeves, who had 7 threes made, finished with 32 points for a game high. The Lakers now 10-11 against the spread as an underdog, 7 outright victories in those 10 covers. Boston has been booked as a favorite in all 25 home games this year, now just 13-12 ATS. A big one for LA, just in terms of the overall record. LeBron James, Anthony Davis or not, and even 500, 50 games already played for the Lake Show. It's a 25-25 straight up record. Hottest team in the association, winners of 9 in a row. That would be the New York Knicks. The Knicks at home last night inside Madison Square Garden edge out the Indiana Pacers 109-105. New York closed as a 3-point home favorite. They cover as a 3-point home favorite. They are one of the best cover teams in the NBA as a favorite this year. Now 21-9 against the spread. And the man on your screen, named an all-star reserve yesterday, Jalen Brunson, goes off for a 40-point performance inside the Mecca. The Knicks were actually down by 8 very early on in the fourth and final quarter. They rally for a 4-point win, 109-105.
It's unbelievable. And I thought right away in the first quarter, Indiana 36, 26. So it's a 10-point lead after quarter number 1 for Indiana. I thought they were going to be away, and here they go. Because why? You have a team that likes to get up-tempo. You have a team in the New York Knicks that's playing a lot of bench players, massive minutes here, and you should be able to tire them out. And it didn't happen here. You saw the final 3 quarters of that game. The Knicks won the second quarter, third quarter, and the fourth quarter to come away with that 109-105 victory. And yesterday early when we were handicapping it, that number was 3.5. So you know what? I'll take the Pacers in this game. I think it's going to be right. And this also included with me thinking OG Anunoby was going to be back into that lineup for the Knicks. And he didn't play last night. And you did see Siakam in the lineup and Halliburton in the lineup for the Pacers. I don't know what's cooking up there in the Garden, but it smells good right now, Ben.
I'll tell you what's cooking. Tom Thibodeau, you mentioned their resilience in the final 3 quarters. Last night's total, any game that features the Pacers is going to have a lofty number, 236. Stays well under as the New York Knicks commanded that second half and the fourth quarter. Defense and effort wins the day for New York. It has led to 9 straight wins. That was February 1st, their first game, of course, of this new month after a 14-2 January. First opening win in February. That's 15 of the last 17 in 2024 for the New York Knicks, and they have covered in 14 of those 15 wins. In 15 of the 17 games in this new calendar year have stayed under. Again, that is Tibbs basketball on full display. Jalen Brunson, an all-star snub a season ago. He was named a reserve yesterday. He pays it off with 40 big ones last night inside Madison Square Garden. So the New York Knicks right now, Donnie, third best record in the Eastern Conference, 32-17. Just behind them by a half game, the Cleveland Cavaliers, fourth best record out east, 30-16. Cleveland picks up win number 30 of the year last night on the road in the Grind City as they get a victory over the Grizzlies. Final score 108-101. Cleveland does not cover as an 8-point road favorite. And Donnie, although Memphis is without Ja Morant and without Marcus Smart and without Desmond Bane, they have now covered in 6 straight games. Keep an eye on the Grizzlies, not to make any noise, but at least to maybe cover you some numbers here in the second half of this NBA season.
Yeah, the Grizz not a very good home team overall by checking the record, which is crazy. They used to have one of the better home court advantages in basketball, now sitting at 5-17 overall after this loss. They actually had a lead at the half against the Cleveland Cavaliers. But yeah, it's one of those dead teams right now that are just waiting for some superstar players to come back. But to flip it back on Cleveland real quick, look, sometimes you get a shot in the arm now. The Philadelphia 76ers might be without the MVP. That was one of those teams you were probably going to jockey for positioning into the playoffs where maybe you could get the 3rd, 4th, and 5th seed. The Sixers are probably going to drop back if Embiid is out for weeks at a time, and you can certainly seize the day here and move up those standings in the Eastern Conference.
The Cavs had won 7 straight. Now they've won 4 in a row. They've been playing really good basketball here as of late. As we said, no Joel Embiid for Philadelphia last night in Salt Lake. When I was making my notes around 5:30, 6 p.m. Eastern time, Tyrese Maxey did not have any props listed. He returned after missing 4 consecutive games and returned in a big way out in Utah. A 51-point output from Tyrese Maxey as the Sixers win outright as a 4.5-point underdog, 127-124.
That's a good sign here. The secondary option stepping up in a big way for the Sixers yesterday, handicapping this game. I just said it wasn't really a handicap. I'll go contrarian and take the Philadelphia 76ers with the points. They go out and win outright. It's getting some terrible news on Joel Embiid. At least you got a W in the process.
A once more likely edition of Super Bowl 58. That's next.
Super Bowl is set in Vegas. We get a rematch from just a few years ago.
The only consistency in the playoffs has been Travis Kelce.
Brock Purdy, back-to-back weeks throwing 1 touchdown pass, right? You can't win MVP with 1 touchdown pass.
I hate the Chiefs, but I bet on them.
This is going to be a game that is played inside a field goal now from a spread perspective.
All that matters is there's 1 game left, the big game.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect 6th man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the Rack. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you could talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We have kept you up to date with the Super Bowl 58 countdown live right here on the early line. And on a football Friday, that Super Bowl countdown is now in single digits. You can start to feel the vibes in the air. Viva Las Vegas. 9 days away from Super Bowl Sunday in Las Vegas. Donnie Rightside and I are just 1 day away from getting on the SportsGrid PJ and headed out to the desert on the West Coast. The next time you will see us, we will be live on Monday morning inside the Super Bowl Media Center, inside the Mandalay Bay Convention Center on Pro Football Today. The early line takes a little break next week as we focus on the big game out in the desert. Donnie Rightside, have you checked in for your flight yet?
I have not, because I think it's 24 hours, so my flight doesn't leave Philadelphia until 8 p.m. on Saturday night. So maybe a little bit later today, we'll be ready to go and do the deal here.
Yeah, good. That's all I hope for. And let's not forget, I'm coming to your hotel room early on Sunday, waking you up, breakfast and brunch
I'll be
in the
way
book.
earlier than you. There's no chance you're waking up earlier than me.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
No way. Like, I'm going to be the guy that's like, man, are you guys ready yet? What is going on here? Oh, I just woke up.
Listen,
I will be the early riser out there in Vegas.
There's no doubt. Donnie Rightside prescribes to a very strict and rigid schedule so he can perform at his absolute best here on the SportsGrid airwaves. For you, the loyal Spiz Grizz viewer, listener, and audience member. And he will carry that over even operating on the West Coast, but with East Coast hours. We do it for you to get you ready for Super Bowl 58. So now we play an edition of what's more likely. A couple of interesting prop bets and maybe even some match bets that we have for Super Bowl 58 to forecast and plan out how the big game might look in 9 days between the Chiefs and the 49ers. So what is more likely? A ton of scores or scoreless? Any scoreless quarter, Donnie, in Super Bowl 58 listed at a plus 360 number on the FanDuel Sportsbook, or the special of both teams. That means both Kansas City and San Francisco score in every one of the 4 quarters in Super Bowl 58. So, question to you. What's more likely? Both teams score in every single quarter, or we get a scoreless quarter out in Las Vegas?
Yeah, or which best bet in this equation would you rather have? So let's break it down. Any scoreless quarter there. It sounds kind of like, okay, both teams open up. It's a little bit slow, 0-0 first quarter. Or you get to the fourth quarter, and it's basically one team going on 4th downs, not kicking field goals. The other team just looking to waste the clock away. I get it, plus 360. But to be honest, I'm really looking for that plus 950 price on both teams to score in all 4 quarters. It sounds like, oh, how could they possibly do that? Well, one team is Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers, who are an offensive juggernaut that you probably expect to score 30 points every single game. So just doing the math, if you're scoring 4 touchdowns, let's just average 1 touchdown per quarter. I know it doesn't wind up like that, but if you're going to score a lot of points, there's a chance you're on the move every quarter. Then on the opposite side, I understand the difficulties in the second half here for the Kansas City Chiefs scoring points, but also keep in mind, the games dictate that flow here. It's like Kansas City goes, well, if you're not scoring and our defense is playing good, we'll just choke you out and run this clock, and we don't need to score, and you might not score at all either in the second half. So I'm likely to take that plus 950 price by saying All you need at least is a field goal per team per quarter here. Forget about the touchdowns. Both of these teams are going to be on the move. Put it this way, Ben. I know both of these defenses are good, but how many 3-and-outs are we going to get between these two teams in this game? Not very many. Patrick Mahomes might be the best quarterback single-handedly of all time, and Brock Purdy's got tons of weapons here in a dome, and also Kyle Shanahan calling those plays here. Give me the plus 950.
I will be very interested to see that coaching mentality, because often in years past, it has been you don't beat Patrick Mahomes and KC with field goals. But now I wonder if the shoe was on the other foot, and Andy Reid is saying we don't beat Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers with field goals either. But Kansas City has found its groove as a defense-first team to get back to this Super Bowl in Super Bowl 58. KC did play a scoreless quarter in the AFC Championship game, that third quarter out of the halftime break against Baltimore in Baltimore a Sunday ago. No scoreless quarters this postseason in either of the two playoff games for San Francisco. 24-21, first game in the divisional round. That's 45 total points. 34-31, 65 total points in the NFC Championship game. Of course, you can correlate it to the total slightly. 47.5 is that number for Super Bowl Sunday. The odds makers are telling you what is more likely. Plus 360 scoreless quarter, a shorter price than plus 950 each team scores in all four quarters. Now we move on to our next edition of what's more likely. Either team wins Super Bowl 58 by a margin of 3 points, plus 450, or either team wins by a touchdown, plus 750. What's more likely, Donnie? The game is decided by exactly 3 points or exactly 7.
Well, based on the odds here, right? FanDuel Sportsbook listing the line here. San Francisco is a favorite of 2.5 points. Most likely, probably by 3 points at a plus 450 price. But also, you're taking a look at those numbers here where it's a tie game. Look, outside of we're going to run this clock down like you saw last year with the Kansas City Chiefs and kick a game-winning field goal, nobody is saying like, okay, 3 minutes to go. Let's go down there and get a field goal with 1:45 on the clock because that should be good enough to win this football game, knowing how quality either Patrick Mahomes is and or the offense itself for the San Francisco 49ers are. So if you are betting this, Ben, I actually like both of these. You say, well, you got to pick one or the other. Of course, not one of these is minus 125. It's like this is going to be the favorite. So if you're looking at a game to wind up between 3 and 7, you take a little bit on the plus 450, take a little bit on the 750, and away you go. But if you said, Donnie, you can't do that, don't be a smart gambler. Just go all in on one wager here. It's probably going to be the 3 because there's a legitimate chance that one team has a football in a tie game, and their singular goal is, yes, we want to score, Ben, but we don't want to score too quickly, which means we get that chip shot field goal with 16 seconds left and force you to throw 2 Hail Marys from your own 30-yard line, just like we saw last year with Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles. I'll take the easy way out, plus 3, plus 450.
Me as well. Again, you correlated to the exact number for this specific Super Bowl matchup, a 2.5-point spread now in favor of San Francisco. And I caution using Super Bowl trends to lead your handicapping by any means because each year is different. Even though this is a Super Bowl 54 rematch, these two specific teams are very different than what we saw 5 years ago in Miami. This Chiefs team is different than what we saw a year ago in Glendale against the Philadelphia Eagles. But that game was decided by 3. Super Bowl 56 between the Rams and the Bengals, also decided by 3. 5 of the last 10 Super Bowls have been decided by a single score. 2 of them in that span, the last 2 seasons, each by that key number of a flat field goal. 6 times in the last 2 decades of the Super Bowl have we seen a 3-point margin. The last time we saw exactly 7 was 24 years ago in Super Bowl 34. The outstanding game between the Rams and the Titans as they tried to lunge for the pylon and came up just a couple of inches short for Tennessee. I think the best bet, given where the spread is with a 2.5-point number, is this game being decided by exactly 3, which will lead into one of our final what's more likely questions in just a few moments. Next up, special scoring for Super Bowl 58. What is more likely between two very long shot things expected to happen on Super Bowl Sunday. A kick or punt return touchdown, that's 12-1. An anytime safety, plus 1260. So what is more likely? A return touchdown that absolutely electrifies the crowd in Las Vegas, or a safety and we see somebody put their hands together above their head and do a little shimmy?
Here's the interesting point about this, too, because you take a look at it says kick/punt return touchdown 12-1. Well, you already can remove the kick return touchdown here because the chances of somebody actually returning a kick are very slim. So basically, it's a punt return touchdown. I'll get back to that in a moment. But the other option would be an anytime safety. Now, there's also two different ways to get that safety. And if you were asking me now, a planned safety is a better option than one that you didn't expect. You said, Donnie, what are you talking about here? A safety is a safety. One is we have the ball on our own 2-yard line. I drop back to pass, and I get sacked in the end zone. That is a true safety here. The other one that you really have to worry about as opposed to that one is the end of game antics to make sure you run as much time off the clock as you possibly can, because what do we know? Nobody wants to punt, Ben, from their own end zone with 30 seconds to go, where a blocked punt would cause you to lose the football game and or tie the football game. So we see sometimes teams go, you know what? Snap the football, run around the end zone, kill 8 seconds, the clock goes to 0, you get a safety, nobody cares, we won the game anyway. But having said that, between the two options here, I'm actually going to go on the punt/kick return touchdown at 12-1. Hey, recency bias. Last year, we didn't get one here, but Kadarius Toney got damn close, Ben, to returning a punt in the comeback victory against the Philadelphia Eagles last year. There will be punts in this football game. Somebody can break one there. Much more likely to me than maybe a planned safety at the end of the game. I'll take the 12-1 price here on a punt return touchdown.
I'm a safety guy. I'm going to go with the safety. I love the 2-point play in football, leading to a free kick on the ensuing possession. I watch too much Big Ten West football. Anyway, what's more likely for who wins Super Bowl MVP? Now, this stood out to me yesterday. As you scroll down the Super Bowl MVP odds, you actually don't have to go all that far to get to the backup quarterbacks. Again, there are 3 guys. Mahomes the favorite, Purdy second best price, and McCaffrey that are at 5-1. Everybody else, starting with Travis Kelce, 17-1 to win Super Bowl 58 MVP or greater. So when you look at Sam Darnold, the backup QB in San Francisco, 170-1 to win Super Bowl MVP. Blaine Gabbert, 310-1 to win Super Bowl MVP. He's the backup quarterback, of course, in Kansas City. Both of those QBs started week number 18 in their respective teams' regular season finales. Or might it be the kickers? 380-1 for Jake Moody. Harrison Butker for Kansas City, 430-1. So what is more likely? A kicker or a backup quarterback wins Super Bowl 58's MVP award?
Yeah, by the way, let's get disrespectful here, too. So we're going to remove the kickers right out of the gate. And I'm not even disrespecting the kickers. They're just not going to win that award unless they make 7 field goals. And still then they probably would give it to like a defensive back with 1 interception over the kicker. But let's get to those quarterback options here, which, again, that's the way I would vote at this point. But if it even had an option like Darnold there, 170-1, and Blaine Gabbert 310-1, which is incredible. You take a look here. The guy I would actually vote for here is Sam Darnold, not because it's actually lower, because the San Francisco 49ers are chock full of talent on offense, and always the disrespect on Brock Purdy is anybody can get in there and drive the engine of this Ferrari out here and make some hay. But also, if we're taking a look at Blaine Gabbert, it might as well be 710-1. Why? Because Patrick Mahomes is the only reason the Chiefs are in this football game. And as much as we hate to say it, Brock Purdy's not the only reason that the San Francisco 49ers are playing in the Super Bowl. So a little bit more Brock Purdy disrespect. I actually would bet my money on Sam Darnold because I think he could be functional. Blaine Gabbert, he would get avalanched, and the Chiefs might not even score if he comes in early in that game.
Listen, no kicker, of course, has ever won a Super Bowl MVP award. There is a chance that if a backup quarterback had to come in and led their team to a Super Bowl, they would very likely win MVP. More on the early line next.
Super Bowl is set in Vegas. We get a rematch from just a few years ago.
The only consistency in the playoffs has been Travis Kelce.
Brock Purdy, back-to-back weeks throwing one touchdown pass, right? You can't win MVP with one touchdown pass.
I hate the Chiefs, but I bet on them.
This is going to be a game that is played inside a field goal now from a spread perspective.
All that matters is there's one game left, the big game.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the rack. It was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like, OKC just rolling into Detroit, going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
It is now the second day of February, but in the final month before March, the first day of February was electric in college basketball. To Lincoln, Nebraska, we go. The Huskers were down by 19 points in the opening half against Wisconsin. They trailed by 16 points at the halftime break. Since the year 2000, nearly 2.5 decades, when Wisconsin has had a 15-plus point lead at the halftime break, they are a perfect 120-0. Now make that 120-1. Nebraska rallies in the second half to force overtime, and in OT, the Cornhuskers prevail 80-72. Nebraska actually closed as a very slight home favorite, minus 118 money line, minus 108 on the other side for Wisconsin. But Nebraska gets a quad one win at home, and for the second time this year, the Huskers defeat a top 10 opponent inside Pinnacle Bank Arena.
Yeah, one of those games where it's 8-1 in conference play here for Wisconsin, now dropped to 8-2. It certainly helps out the Purdue Boilermakers in that effort, but you're right about this. It's hard to win on the road. We talk about it a lot, but I can't get over the fact that Wisconsin, when they have a lead, is supposed to be the ultimate. We're not going to turn the basketball over. We're going to make our shots here. We're going to run the shot clock down. You have to be perfect the rest of the way, and scoring 40 points in the second half. Nebraska did that to tie the score and then carried that momentum over into overtime. That's an unbelievable win by the Cornhuskers against an opponent that not supposed to blow leads.
It has been a decade since Nebraska beat two top 10 foes in the same season. 2013-14, the last time the Huskers made the NCAA tournament. Nebraska has something special brewing this year in Lincoln. They are the only high major conference team to never win a game in the Big Dance. Arizona has, and Arizona was booked as an 18.5-point home favorite yesterday in Tucson against Cal. The Cats go to a big victory, 91-65, covering as an 18.5-point favorite. The 8th time in 10 conference games for Arizona, booked as a double-digit favorite, now 4-4 against the spread. Hard win handicaps in the association when hour 2 starts in 55 seconds.